There's a moment every single one of us has experienced. It's when you're trying to learn something new, something complex and exciting. You're pouring hours into it, you're making progress, but then you hit a wall. You're stuck. You've tried everything you can think of, and you finally decide to reach out for help. You carefully formulate your question and post it in a community of experts, hoping for a lifeline. And then it comes. Not a helping hand, but a slap on the wrist. Your question gets a downvote, and the first reply isn't an answer, but a short, sharp, sarcastic comment. Something like, "Did you even bother to read the manual?" Or, "This has been answered 1,000 times." That feeling, that mix of embarrassment, frustration, and discouragement is incredibly powerful. It can be the moment a budding passion dies. This experience is so common that it's become a classic debate in many skilled communities, but perhaps none more famously than in the world of programming. For years, the developer Q&A site Stack Overflow, an invaluable resource for so many, has also faced criticism for being notoriously harsh towards newcomers. A beginner asks what seems to them a perfectly reasonable question, only to be met with a barrage of downvotes and sarcastic replies. The experienced users argue, "We're maintaining quality." These are low-effort questions that clutter the space. The newcomers feel like they've been pushed away from a club they desperately want to join. So, what is really going on here? This isn't a simple case of experts are mean, and it's also not fair to say every beginner's question is a model of clarity. The dynamic is far more complex, and it reveals profound truths about how we learn, how we protect our own identities, and how communities can, sometimes unintentionally, build walls instead of bridges. Today, we're going to dissect the psychology behind this friction. We'll explore why a reasonable question can be met with an unreasonable response, and what it tells us about the hidden biases that govern our online interactions. To understand the expert's perspective, we have to start with a cognitive bias called the curse of knowledge. It's a simple idea with profound consequences. Once you know something, it's almost impossible to remember what it was like not to know it. For a senior developer who has been working with a programming language for a decade, certain concepts are as intuitive as breathing. They've forgotten the initial struggle, the confusion, the dozens of small aha moments that built their foundation of knowledge. Their knowledge isn't a list of facts anymore. It's a deeply integrated mental model. So when a beginner asks, "Why am I getting this specific error message?" the expert doesn't just see the question. They see a dozen underlying concepts the beginner is clearly missing. Their impatience comes from this cognitive gap. The response, "You need to learn the fundamentals first," isn't just dismissive. From their perspective, it's the only logical advice. They can't easily see the one small piece of missing information the beginner actually needs because they can only see the entire complex system. This isn't necessarily malice. It's a failure of empathy caused by a cognitive blind spot. They are so far ahead on the path, they've forgotten what the beginning of the trail even looks like. They're trying to give directions from the mountaintop to someone who is still looking for the parking lot. This is deepened by a powerful psychological force: survivorship bias. We form our understanding of the world based on the examples that survived, often because the failures are invisible. Many of today's senior experts learned their skills in a different era. An era of RTFM, read the manual. They taught themselves by grinding through dense documentation, by trial and error, by spending days, sometimes weeks, stuck on a single problem. They survived that trial by fire, and it shaped their identity. From their perspective, this difficult path is not just how they learned, it's the right way to learn. It builds character, it weeds out those who aren't serious, and it ensures a deep, fundamental understanding. So, when they see newcomers asking for direct answers, it can feel like a shortcut, an attempt to bypass the very struggle that they believe is necessary for true mastery. Their sarcastic reply is, in a way, a defense of their own journey. It's a projection of their own experience, a belief that says, "I climbed this mountain without a rope, and so should you." They don't see the thousands of people who tried to climb that way, fell, and gave up on the journey entirely. They only see themselves, the survivors, at the top. This isn't just about gatekeeping knowledge, it's about upholding the value of their own arduous experience. Now, we have to talk about ego. In any community based on skill, from surgery to chess to coding, competence is the primary form of social currency. Your status, your reputation, is built on what you know and what you can do. In this environment, a question can be perceived in several ways. A thoughtful, well-researched question elevates the conversation and allows experts to showcase their knowledge in a meaningful way. But a question that seems basic can feel, to some, like noise. It can be subconsciously perceived as a drain on the community's most valuable resource, the time and attention of its experts. The act of delivering a sharp, sarcastic, yet technically correct put-down serves a dual purpose. First, it quickly resolves the annoyance of the basic question. Second, and more importantly, it's a status performance. It's a public display that says, "I am so far beyond this level of questioning that I can dismiss it with wit." It reinforces their position in the community's hierarchy. This isn't to say these experts are insecure people, but in a purely digital space where your identity is tied to your contributions, protecting the signal-to-noise ratio and demonstrating your expertise can become deeply intertwined. The condescending response is a tool for regulating both the community and their own status within it. A single sarcastic comment is one thing, but what turns it into a full-blown culture of intimidation is the power of group dynamics. Online platforms run on signals. An upvote is a signal of quality. A downvote is a signal of irrelevance or poor quality. When the first expert sees a question and deems it unworthy, their downvote and sarcastic comment act as a powerful signal to the rest of the group. Others who see this signal are now primed to see the question in a negative light. They may not have even had a strong opinion initially, but seeing that it's already been negatively sanctioned by an expert, they join in. This is a well-documented phenomenon of social conformity. The downvotes pile on, not always because each individual has independently judged the question to be terrible, but because they are following the established group consensus. This creates a chilling effect. The culture of the community begins to self-reinforce. Newcomers see how prior beginners were treated and learn to stay silent. Potential helpers see the negativity and decide not to engage. Slowly, the community's norms shift from a place to get help to a place to prove you don't need help. The very culture begins to select for a certain kind of personality, one that is thick-skinned, aggressive, and conforms to the existing power structure. So we see that the tension between beginner and expert is not a simple story. It's a collision of cognitive biases, of generational differences in learning, of ego management, and powerful group dynamics. This is not an indictment of expert communities. They are essential. Their need for high-quality standards is real, but it is a call for reflection. The ultimate goal of a community of knowledge is not just to be a static archive of answers for those who are already in the club. It should be a living ecosystem that nurtures the next generation of experts. The choice, for every experienced member of a community, is what to do with their expertise. Do they use it as a weapon to enforce standards and maintain hierarchy? Or do they use it as a tool to build a better ladder for those who are still climbing? Answering a beginner's question with patience, pointing them to the right resources without shaming them, or even just silently moving on if you don't have the energy to help, these are not just acts of kindness. They are acts of community building. They are a conscious decision to value the human being behind the question just as much as the quality of the content. Because the person you help today might be the expert who provides the brilliant, world-changing answer tomorrow. Thanks for watching.